Bob, thanks so much for those very gracious remarks. And how lucky, how blessed are we as an industry to have someone of Bob Schieffer's talent and profession working with us. How fortunate am I to be introduced by the man who today at CBS News exemplifies the integrity and the spirit of Edward R. Murrow. I'm truly honored. When Ed Esposito called me last summer to tell me of this potential honor, he first asked me if I would accept. When I said yes, he added, "Well, that's what I thought, so the committee's already voted you in. Done deal." My first reaction was, is this a Lifetime Achievement Award? Does this mean my career is over? Is this just an expensive way to lure me out of town while they change the locks on my door? But seriously, my reaction was and is that I'm one lucky guy to be able to do the work I love, to spend my days and my years among the best and the brightest in my profession at an iconic company, CBS, that embraces the highest standards of journalism. 72 years ago next week, on March 13th, 1938, the Columbia Broadcasting System aired a special radio program on Adolf Hitler's invasion of Austria. On that evening, Edward R. Murrow reported from Vienna, William Shire reported from London, and Bob Trout brought it all together as the anchor in New York. Bob, do you remember that event? Well, that program marked the first time a series of correspondents in the fields were linked together. That special evolved into the CBS World News Roundup. The Murrow boys were the eyes and ears in Europe, and the era of broadcast journalism was born. 72 years later, the CBS World News Roundup is still on the air and still matters to millions of Americans. Every day in our CBS radio newsroom, we strive to fulfill Murrow's quest for excellence. And while Murrow's world may seem like it bears little resemblance to our world today, we should remember that he not only established standards that we continue to follow, he also embraced new technology, which for him was the power of radio and shortwave transmissions. And I'm sure Murrow would have viewed today's new digital technologies with the same healthy skepticism he had about television. Will today's technology be used to teach, illuminate, and inspire? As Murrow said in his speech to this organization in 1958, it can only do so to the extent that humans are determined to use it to those ends. As Bob mentioned, I'm the first individual radio broadcaster ever to receive a First Amendment award. That in itself is humbling, given the number of people in my medium who deserve to be standing here. So to me, tonight is a celebration of radio news and an opportunity to shine a light on what we do in radio, an award to be shared by so many, particularly my incredibly talented and hardworking CBS staff and the program directors who lead all news talk radio stations around the country. They are the ones who are responsible for the huge megaphone that we call CBS Radio News. It's the proud entity that 26 million listeners hear each week. Some of these programmers are with us tonight, and I'm proud to say they are not only my colleagues, but they're also my friends. I'm sure everyone on this dais would agree that if we succeed, it is because of the work of others. So permit me to introduce you to just a few of the many people who share in this honor with me tonight. I can't speak highly enough about the great group of leaders at CBS, headed by my long-term general manager, Constance Lloyd. And our other leaders are here tonight: Charlie Kay, Linda Coons, Alia Gitt, and Craig Swagler. Preceding Constance as general manager was the consummate radio news professional, Mike Friedman, and I thank you all. Also here tonight is Ed Kiernan. He was the general manager who took a chance and hired me to program WCBS News Radio in New York some 22 years ago. And as we saw on the video, Scott Herman gave me the opportunity to run the network 12 years ago. He's both a dear friend and a mentor. And Dan Mason has done a masterful job of directing the radio division, especially in these very challenging times. Sean McManus, the president of CBS News and Sports, has been extraordinarily supportive, and Jim McKenna, our finance guru, is the unheralded angel of the CBS News division. First Amendment would not have the teeth if not for the unconditional backing of people like Sean and Dan and Jim, who provide much more than financial resources that make our jobs easier. Not once in the decades that I've been in this business has anyone in a corporate role told me how to position the news. I think that speaks volumes about companies like CBS and my former employer, ABC. Most important, I thank my friends and family for all of their love and support throughout the years for putting up with this admitted news junkie, particularly when I ask the question at family dinners like, what's the lead here? Stop burying the headline. My wife Susan and our children and their spouses are all here tonight, and they are my true inspiration, and if anyone deserves an award, it's them. And what an honor for me to be sharing the dais with such esteemed colleagues. I've always respected Brian as an anchor, but that respect increased by leaps and bounds on the day we were flying back together from Washington a few years ago, and he told me he listened to every CBS hourly newscast on radio so we could stay on top of the news. I said to myself, that's a really smart guy. Although I was a little angry with you today, Brian, I must admit, we were with some friends, and they had cameras out, and I said, oh, isn't that really nice? They're going to take a picture of me in my tuxedo, and they said, no, Harvey, we want to take a picture with Brian. As I mentioned when Ed called, I was thrilled and excited, but the euphoria lasted just 1 month. I received one of those middle-of-the-night calls that literally changes your life. I know that Steve and David and Brian have also received similar calls. For me, it was the second time. The first occurred 3 years ago when Kimberly Dozier was critically injured in Iraq. This past August, the call was about Cammie McCormick, who was with an Army embed in Logar province in Afghanistan. She was in a vehicle that was destroyed by an explosive device. I called Sean and his number 2, Paul Friedman, then drove a very long 3 hours back to New York from Lenox, Massachusetts. The information at first was conflicting. First reports were not encouraging. 45 minutes later, a public information officer said she was in good shape. Then an hour later, discouraging news, she was seriously hurt. My head was spinning. What will I tell the staff? What will I tell Cammie's family, my family? What exactly is my own role? As strange as it may seem, my thoughts also turn to the First Amendment, the pursuit of truth, the essential role that the press plays in war coverage. I replayed in my mind all of the arguments I had had with Cammie about not wanting her to go back to Afghanistan. But covering breaking news is Cammie's passion. This is what she lives for. The soldier driving her vehicle was dead. She was operated on at a makeshift field hospital and flown to Bagram Air Base, then transported to Landstuhl, Germany, where I joined her. 5 days later, Cammie was still in a drug-induced coma when she arrived at Walter Reed here in Washington. I realize you've not heard very much about Cammie since that first announcement of her injuries, because that's the way she wanted it. Her only desire was to get better and to return to covering stories. Tonight, after numerous surgeries, months and months of painful rehab, Cammie McCormick, one of the most courageous, fearless individuals I've ever known, an inspiration to all of us, someone who never complains and is constantly telling me, guess what I was able to do today? Cammie is almost ready to return to work. And right now I'm able to say something I was not sure I would ever have the opportunity to say again. Cammie, please stand up and be recognized. I think we can all agree that Cammie represents why we are all here tonight. to celebrate and honor our freedom of the press, a freedom we cherish, a freedom worth fighting for, a freedom that 71 journalists gave their lives for last year. One thing I have no doubt about is that Murrow would be damn proud of Cami and of every effort by those of us here tonight to keep the light of the First Amendment shining bright. For the last 40 years, it's been my honor to work with people who are extraordinarily passionate about our profession. It is on their behalf that I accept this award tonight. To all of you and the many more whose names right now are in my head and heart, I thank you.